What's up everybody, Jeff here, and today we're going to talk about the Explorer Society. So if you're not familiar with this series, what we're going to do is we are going to go through every master in the Explorer Society, talk about their background, their lore, some of the things that make them cool and interesting, and a little bit about how they play in the game to help you decide which of the masters is the one you want to play. And in addition, we're going to show some cool art and painted models from the crews that we're talking about to give you a better sense of how they look. I always think that the rule of cool is the best way to go when picking a master, so hopefully getting a little bit of background about their lore is going to help you make the decision. But just in case you care about the game as well, we're going to have Sam from the Danger Planet come in and explain some of their mechanics. Now, if you haven't picked out a faction yet, then make sure you check out the faction breakdown video that I did. It's a very similar idea to this, but it's to pick out your favorite faction as opposed to your favorite master. And then we've also gone through and done a bunch of the factions already, including the Arcanist, the Ten Thunders, the Guild, and the Bayou. The rest of them will be coming soon, so make sure you keep an eye out for that. Justin Cooper grew up in a very wealthy family. In spite of that fact, his father refused to provide him a life of luxury. The only thing he was willing to splurge on was going out on hunts. Justin was reluctant, and eventually it pushed his father to disown him, cutting him off from the family's money until he could prove himself. So Justin hired some of his father's huntsmen, who were happy to teach him how to hunt, and it awakened something in Justin. The thrill of being out in the wild, in a kill-or-be-killed situation, showed the man what true power was. Having pleased his father, he started traveling around the world, going on more and more exotic hunts, until they all became boring and he set his sights on Malifaux. When he arrived in the strange new world, he founded the Explorer Society, an organization said to be about discovery and exploration, but in reality, it was just about exploitation and wealth. His presence in Malifaux attracted the attention of Marcus, who sabotaged one of Cooper's weapons, causing him to be mauled by a Slate Ridge Mauler. This put Cooper in the hospital, his body almost completely broken, and in need of replacement limbs and organs. With his immense wealth, Cooper was able to hire the best in the business, and when they developed the final versions of his artificial limbs, Cooper found that they were better than the originals. He was now able to go on even more dangerous hunts, but he also had a little matter of revenge. Lord Cooper is a rich dude with a big rifle that likes to kill things. He actually got so sick of hunting animals that he started hiring people to run away from him so he could hunt them, and if they were able to survive, they'd get a payout. Naturally, in a place like Malifaux, he had a lot of takers. His crew's really interesting. Model 9 is some of the leftover parts of past iterations of his artificial limbs. And then you got his 2 hunting dogs, as well as a bunch of other huntsmen. On top of all that, you've got the Malosaurus Rex, which is a big Cthulhu dinosaur, so I'm definitely all about it. They have an interesting playstyle on the table, so for more about that, let's go over to Sam.
Cooper is about as unsubtle as the Explorer Society gets. He's a bit like Seamus. He's a man with a big gun. And like Seamus, he can only shoot the gun once per turn normally. Although also like Seamus, he has that ability to shoot it a second time under some circumstances. His gun's longer range than Seamus's. Not quite the same damage, but close. It's basically -1 damage. He's also got predatory instinct, as does most of his crew, which is very cool. It basically lets him choose once per activation to take a minus twist on an attack for a plus twist on damage, or vice versa. And that gets you into some really cool math when you combine it with things like Adversary Apex, which a lot of his models can hand out, or Focus. You can take that minus twist on the attack flip, compensate for it with Adversary Apex or Focus, or even just a Soulstone, and then get that extra plus twist to damage. Especially with Focus, it's a second positive twist to damage, makes it really easy to be on that straight flip, so you can cheat in a Severe for that big 7 damage. And with the right trigger, it even ignores hard to kill. Cooper's also got these fun totems, the Runaways. They're basically Mennies hunting for sport, the most dangerous game, and they start on the center line, and they're really just trying to escape the board. And if they do, you get some pretty big bonuses, but they're pretty weak and easy to kill. Cooper 2 is focusing more on beasts. So he has the ability to allow his beasts to take extra attacks if he shoots you with his bow or deals damage to you in some way. And he also has the ability to give enemies adversary beast with his bow, which is, very strong. There's some pretty good beasts in Explorer Society, too. I mean, everyone knows the Malosaurus Rex in Apex, but you've got the Damned, you've got the Sandworm. Cooper 2 also can throw out these pit traps, which I think is very appropriate for a hunter. And pit traps are real scary. Dropping injured on somebody is really nasty. And the Apex keyword generally is just a very interesting set of hunters. You've got Vitagi Huntsman, you've got Crypsis Core, really good guns all around, although they tend to not be great in melee. Cooper's dogs are okay in melee, and of course there's the Malosaurus Rex, which, although fragile, is pretty killer if it can make those attacks.
Maxine Agassiz had a passion for science from a very young age. She pursued an education, something that was frowned upon by her father, until she invented the first electrical battery and changed his mind. She went on to get a collection of advanced degrees, and then traveled the world pursuing her scientific endeavors. On her ship, the EV Superior, she met with people of many different cultures, several of whom joined her crew along with her and her husband. When the Burning Man arrived on Earth, Maxine was driven to try to find a scientific explanation for the portals that would pop up around the world. She was eventually successful in this endeavor, and she and her ship were accidentally sucked through a portal and appeared in the oceans of Malifaux. There, she was quickly recruited by the Explorer Society and put in charge of exploring Malifaux's oceans. Unbeknownst to Maxine, her transit through the portal had inadvertently lured the Burning Man back to Malifaux. There, it spread its horrible influence, and Maxine started spending more and more of her time locked up in her office, studying frantically. Her loved ones started noticing her behavior becoming more and more strange, and they didn't know it, but she had been reading from the Flamme, the holy book of the Burning Man, that's been known to spread its madness. Maxine's really interesting because she's kind of the mad scientist trope, to an extent, because she was a really gifted scientist and then she actually went mad because of the Burning Man. Her crew is kind of an interesting mishmash of a bunch of different types of things, which is reflected in her lore because she's kind of an explorer as well as a scientist. And she picks up different people from all around the world. So you've got Kia, who was a member of the Abyssinian army as an electrocutioner. And you've got Harada, who is from New Zealand and has a bunch of different connections to different parts of the lore. And then you've got some machines and fishermen and water elementals and all kinds of really cool stuff. It's a really strange looking crew, but I think it works really well. But with that, let's go back over to Sam, who's going to tell us a little bit more about how they play.
Maxine is really cool. Her whole keyword mechanic is what's called reconfigure. Now, every model has a reconfigure suit. The reconfigure suit, which is different for each model, is if you ever cheat a card of that suit and the value of the card is less than 9, you can choose to treat it as a 9. So this really lets you take these bad cards you have in your hand, like 1s and 2s, and if you cheat them with the right model, they're 9s. That's a pretty solid cheat. It's certainly at least good enough to hit your TNs. And all of her models have these really cool, unique abilities and triggers that tend to go with their reconfigure suits, so you really are rewarded for using the right suit with the right models. Maxine herself has a pretty strong gun, and also she can hand out conditions with impromptu invention, and she can pick whatever suit she wants for her reconfigure. She also has that neat little trick that when she picks a suit for her reconfigure, for the duration of that turn, your opponent's cards of that suit are treated as 1s against her. So sometimes she'll just randomly win a duel. Your opponent flips a 13 masks, and you're like, sorry, that's a 1. Maxine 2 is monomaniacal. She teleports around the board, slapping people with a tentacle. And she also has this really cool ability to heal when you use a reconfigure cheat or you discard a card from your deck. She's a bit nerfed from where she was, but she still has some interesting gameplay, especially with the tentacle having such great triggers on it. And she also has some really cool card manipulation and deck manipulation abilities, like calculate the possibilities. And even if you lose her, doesn't matter. The first time she dies, she comes back to life on the center line. But in general, the EVS crew is just a really fun clockwork machine where as long as you're using the right cards in the right place, you can get a lot of really powerful stuff done.
English Ivan is a man of many mysteries. Some people think he works for the Miners and Steamfitters Union, while others think he works for the Guild and is spying on the Union. Many rumors have gone around about different operations that he might have been a part of, but none of them seem to agree with each other. The few people that do know him are the other members of the Department of Ungentlemanly Affairs. These informants and spies live normal lives until they're summoned, and their shadowy work often goes unnoticed. Some suspect that he's part of the Explorer Society, and it's true that soon after Gretchen Janis took over, English Ivan received an invitation. He was disturbed by the fact that she seemed to know more about him than he did her, and he decided to join up, if for no other reason than to keep an eye on them. This arrangement saw Ivan going on many unusual assignments, one of which found him looking for an artifact that produced darkness. The artifact sucked him into a shadowy realm, and he almost lost his life if it weren't for the help of other members of the DUA. But his time spent in the Shadow Realm had an effect on him, and now he walks between both worlds, and he often finds himself among unusual companions and voices that are not his own. Perhaps most interestingly, Ivan's shadow, Mr. Mordrake, has taken on something of a life of its own, being able to detach itself from the man, to creep in and out of secure locations or spy on people, and then return to Ivan with intel. English Ivan's crew is one of the coolest looking crews in the Explorer Society. It's got this dual dynamic. One side is the spies and secret agents, everything from your tough guy to your gadget man. And then on the other side, you have all of the shadow creatures. Some of these are monsters, and some of these are literal shadows of other beings. Ivan can literally rip somebody's shadow away from them and then turn it against them in battle. It's really cool. A lot of the shadowy models are kind of grayscale, so it can be an interesting painting project as well, to try to find ways to make them stand out a little bit more. But with that, let's go back over to Sam, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about how the crew plays on the table.
English Ivan. He's a dual keyword model, Dua Umbra. Dua is the Department of Ungentlemanly Affairs, and a lot of these Dua models are kind of tricksy. I mean, you've got Corvus Rook, who is pretty much just a beater, but Corvus is slippery, he's hard to pin down. He has got that price of progress ability to build in triggers. But beyond him, Eva Havenhand she teleports around, locking down scheme markers. Gibson DeWalt is a kind of a really cool model with tools for the job and some interesting support abilities that can give models fast and focused and create this bridge between shadow markers. But mostly what the crew is doing is summoning these shadow monsters. Ivan can do it by targeting enemies with his attack. There's a trigger on it that basically instead of doing damage, you summon a shadow model based on the willpower of the target. And the shadow models, the Umbra models, are actually pretty tough. I mean, the Devas and Brock Inspectors, they're not very durable, but they can do quite a lot of damage, especially if your opponent is not really clearing them effectively. A lot of these models also can create shadow markers, which are concealing markers. They can use them for various effects. They can consume them to heal. But also, just handing out concealment is very strong. It makes your models tougher, and some of your models, your duo models especially, actually treat the negative twist from concealment as a positive twist. So it's kind of like a free focus, sort of, without the damage portion of it. Ivan 2 is very much playing into this tricky, sort of shadowy, secret agent theming. He can teleport friendly models around using Shade Shot or Displacing Shot. And he has these really cool secret plan upgrades, which he can attach at the start of the game face down. And you can trigger them once per game. They're kind of neat effects. One of them is like a pseudo obey. One of them summons a Deva. They're these cool little effects. And the thing is, at the start of the game, you don't have to tell your opponent which ones you're going to be using that game. So you can kind of keep them guessing.
During the Tyrant War, Titania and her allies were desperate to find a way to counter the powerful entities they were fighting. The Autumn Queen started experimenting with creating life, and the first successful result was Cadmus. This hive mind was able to spread itself through mites that would infest other creatures, and allowed Cadmus to see through their eyes and even control their movements. As this network spread out, it gave Titania the ability to see far and wide. Titania had told Cadmus not to infest her fae, but as the hive mind grew, it became more curious, and eventually it couldn't resist the temptation. When Titania found out, she banished Cadmus, putting it into a deep sleep that eventually saw the death of all of the mites, and the main body went into hibernation. Once Titania was reawoken, Cadmus stirred, and eventually it was discovered by the Explorer Society, who freed it. Cadmus now reports to Gretchen Janus, and once again spreads its mites across Malifaux, and reporting back what they see. But their curiosity is still growing, and they've heard about a strange barrier called the Breach that has piqued their interest. So Nexus is the current central core for the Cadmus hive mind. And if you like creepy things, then you're really going to like this crew. So because Cadmus infects things with mites, there's definitely a theme of bugs and creepy crawlies all across all the models in the crew. They infest normal people, they infest scientists, they infest other creatures. You definitely won't want to play this crew if you're afraid of bugs or spiders. And even their gameplay mechanics involve infecting your opponents with parasite tokens. But for more about the specifics of how that works, let's go back over to Sam.
Nexus and the Cadmus keyword are very weird. They're bugs, basically, and so they have these parasite tokens they can inflict on you. And when an enemy model has a parasite token, depending on which Nexus you're playing, different things happen. With the original Nexus, your models can treat that model as a friendly during their activations, which is strong because a lot of your models have We Are Legion, which lets them spread out healing and damage that they would take to other nearby friendly Cadmus models. So you can damage yourself, ping that damage onto a nearby enemy instead. You also have certain abilities that can only target friendly Cadmus models, which becomes a lot stronger when you're treating enemies as friendly Cadmus models. So there's a lot of really cool gameplay with her. She's definitely an engine. She can summon these eyes and ears, which are these kind of crappy little dudes that don't really do much, but Dr. Meredith Stanley, her henchman, can upgrade them to Berserker Husks, which are fairly nasty melee beaters. So a lot of her keyword is basically putting out these web markers, putting out parasite tokens, like infesting the board, infesting your opponent's crew, and then kind of slowly drinking their blood and like sapping their strength. And Nexus One of Many is kind of similar to that. It's 3 masters in one, these kids. They're pretty weak and fragile individually, and I'll be honest with you, the kids got nerfed really hard. They were extremely broken at launch, but they got nerfed in like 10 separate ways, so they're not great right now, but they have some tricks. Their whole thing is if you have a parasite token on you, they can discard it off of you to reduce your duel total by 2. It's kind of like the opposite of Chi. So it's a really neat ability. It can really mess with your opponent's math, especially if they're trying to like summon something. It's just an ability that really makes your opponent have to think extra hard about everything they do.
If you're finding this video helpful, then make sure you give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on what's coming next. Don't forget to drop a comment and let us know which of these masters is your favorite, and consider sharing the video with some friends if you think they might like it. In addition, you can check out all the important links in the description below, including my weird affiliate link, where you can pick up any of these crews, and just by shopping through that link, it's going to support my channel. Plus the merch store where you can get all kinds of cool stuff, as well as a link to the Discord where you can come hang out, and the Patreon where you can support the channel directly. On the Patreon, there's a whole bunch of different benefits you can get, including early access to videos, being able to see the videos without ads, and being able to see the videos without these little interruptions in the middle. But with that, let's get right back to the Explorer Society. In her early days, Jedza always noticed that wherever she went, life always seemed to be a little bit more vibrant. But she always had to stay aware, as she had witnessed a terrible evil, and as a result, she's being hunted. Over time, she aged, but death never found her, and she soon came to realize that her blessing was actually a curse. Over the centuries, she witnessed the birth and death of many loved ones, and the rise and fall of entire civilizations. When the breach to Earth opened, Jedza was curious, and when her past finally caught up with her, she was saved by a strange woman. Now that the second breach is open, Gretchen Janis of the Explorer Society has come to call in that favor. Working for the Explorer Society has seen Jedza travel to unusual places in Malifaux, trying to uncover mysteries and collect ancient artifacts. She's always got her two companions with her, Sophie, whose skeletal form is just a pile of bones unless it's in proximity of Jedza, whose magic has the effect of reanimating the corpse, and Mikhail, Jedza's bodyguard, whose family has served her for generations after she saved their small village from being attacked. Jedza's gift of unending life is also a curse, and perhaps soon she'll find a way to lift that curse. So Jedza and her crew have a lot of really cool stuff going on, but to tell us a little bit more about why you might find them interesting, let's go over to Dag from the Dead Aussie Gamer.
So in addition to the incredibly super cool macabre style that Jedza has, which honestly just suits me to a T, Jedza and the Seekers are probably the most resilient army in the game of Malifaux. Now, even though a lot of people say that it's the healing side of things and the defense that make her really cool, for me, it's the fact that Jedza and her army always seem to set the pace of the battles that they're in. Whether it's Jedza themselves taking control of certain areas with 2 or 3 bodyguards that are basically indestructible, or characters that surreptitiously move around the board surprisingly quickly with schemes and strategies like Osteria and Twig, or the Damned, for example. This makes for not only a versatile gameplay style, but also one that throws in so many unexpected twists and turns. My favorite twist, however, is getting Tannenbaum and changing my scheme mid-game. Nothing is more pleasurable than realizing, oh wow, my scheme is not working out here. No worries, I'll use this one instead.
Thanks a lot, Dag. Everybody be sure to go over and check out the Dead Aussie Gamer's YouTube channel, as well as Twitch. They're both going to be linked down in the description below. He's a really awesome GM, and he does a lot of tabletop RPG streams, including playing through the Breach, so you'll definitely want to check those out. But with that, let's go back over to Sam, who's going to tell us a little bit more about Jedza and her crew and how they play in the game.
So Jedza is a very interesting model with kind of a unique playstyle. Now, her whole crew has what's called chronicle abilities. A chronicle is when a nearby model, that's Aura 6, heals, the ability triggers, and it does something. And everyone's chronicle is a little different. Sometimes you're pushing the healed model around, sometimes you're cycling cards, sometimes you're pulsing out damage, sometimes you're giving conditions. They all have interesting chronicle abilities. So a lot of her keyword models have some ability to heal, and some of them also have the ability to damage themselves or each other. So when you do that, you're damaging yourself, you're damaging each other, you're creating the ability to heal yourself, and then trigger these chronicles. So it's a very, very strong keyword, and with Jedza 1, you can really damage yourself without fear because she has this amazing aura ability where if a friendly model near her, a friendly seeker model, would die, instead of that model dying, she can have that model survive with 2 health, and she loses a life token. And you get these life tokens in a few ways, mostly by having nearby models be killed. But that ability to just no-sell a model dying is very, very strong. But it is an aura, and it requires line of sight, so you have to be careful. And this is a real bubble crew, as you might have guessed. But enemies who come into the bubble are also punished because Jedza makes enemies healing turn into damage the first time each activation. So if someone has regeneration, it becomes degeneration. Now, Jedza's title form is a lot more aggressive. She doesn't have the healing tricks, but she has an irreducible attack that she can channel through markers using the Dredge Up ability. So she's very, very strong in that respect, and some Seeker models can create these geode markers, which are hazardous markers. So you can push a hazardous marker into you and deal some damage that way, and then make an attack that does irreducible damage. She's also pretty tough to get rid of with a life leech and hard to wound. And if she kills someone with her attack, she heals as well. So she's pretty good at keeping herself topped off. Her keyword generally is just a very durable keyword that heals a lot and really wants you to keep them near each other to benefit from all those overlapping chronicle synergies.
Anya inherited Condor Rails, her father's railroad company, at a young age. After his disappearance, she took charge and began aggressively expanding the company, using the lessons he had taught her as a child. Condor Rails is now a familiar sight all around Malifaux, but especially around Ridley, and many of their competitors have either disappeared or been absorbed. Her father had warned her not to ally herself with the Malifaux Explorer Society, But Anya saw it as an opportunity and decided to cooperate with the organization in order to take advantage of their resources. But her business practices have attracted the attention of the guild, who fear that Condor Rails might be becoming a monopoly. So Anya keeps lawyers, spies, and mercenaries on the payroll, determined not to let the guild stop her from advancing her interests. The company was founded using unscrupulous tactics, and Anya's not going to let something like morality stand in her way. Anya and the Syndicate crew are really interesting because we already have a rail yard crew in Mei Fang and the Foundry. But while Mei Fang is all about supporting her people and workers' rights, Anya is kind of the hyper-capitalist version of that. She's ruthless, and you get the sense that she's much less concerned about the people beneath her. They're just tools to get the job done. It'll be interesting if we ever see the two of them clash in a story. As of right now, Anya's crew is one of the smallest crews in the game, but she does have some pretty cool models, including Sovereign, a metal Thunderbird, as well as workers, spies, and the owners of other companies that Condor Rails has snatched up. But with that, let's go back over to Sam to tell us a little bit more about what Anya can do on the tabletop.
Anya Lycoran and the Syndicate keyword are very much a glass cannon keyword. Now, they all have the ability Price of Progress, which lets them take a point of damage before they flip cards in a duel to add any suit they want. In principle, that's infinite free triggers. Now, in practice, these models are pretty fragile, and dealing a bunch of damage to yourself, you're really putting yourself in the danger zone. There's a lot of free ping healing in the crew with the Glory of Ridley trigger, which is a little AoE pulse heal of 1 point of damage. But, it's tough because it's a pulse, so they really aren't healing themselves, they're healing each other. And you are really putting yourself at risk when you take that damage. These models are not tough to begin with. That said, Anya Original is a very fast, jumping killer who can really just leap into melee and then start chopping things up with her Ancestral Tomahawk and dealing pretty significant damage. She's, again, kind of glass cannon, but if you can kill things, you can keep her alive. And hostile work environment makes it kind of frustrating sometimes for your opponent to deal with her because they can't really buff their models. There's also a little bit of a hazardous terrain sub-theme here where original Anya can cause your scheme markers to be hazardous terrain, and there's also a couple of other models in the keyword that can either create hazardous terrain or treat the area around them as hazardous terrain. Now, on top of her, there's Anya Lycoran 2, who's very different. She's kind of like Lucius, where she's very much a manipulator who's trying to help other friendly models take actions. She reduces your opponent's hand size, which is kind of neat because there's some hand tax sub-theming in this crew, where you have effects like Execute that force an opponent to discard or die, and then you have flexible morality, so models attacking you have to discard a card, or they suffer a minus twist on their attack flip. So you can really tax someone's hand and then get in there with those Execute punches from Corvus Rook. This Anya's also got this really cool aura that basically turns off enemy scheme markers, just makes them not exist. Now, she's not very tough, and she doesn't do a lot of damage. She's really relying on her crew, but if you can get her crew to, come through for her and be in the right position for her to order them to take actions, you can do a surprising amount of damage, even during her own activation. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention her totem, Sovereign. He's great. Big bird, has a great shockwave. He has another shockwave effect that he generates when he moves. He's got Fly With Me. He's just real strong and dangerous. Low defense, but armor 2 makes it so some crews have a really hard time dealing with him.
Cornelius Bass never wanted to work for the guild. He grew up in Oklahoma, and as he got older, he became accustomed to frontier life. He associated with vagabonds, bandits, and settlers, though he always found that he had a strong moral compass. Soon he had acquired a reputation for delivering frontier justice, and he settled down and married a woman who gave him a daughter. Soon his wife died, and he was left to raise his daughter Bernadette by himself. He tried to instill his morals in her, but also taught her the importance of self-defense, and when she got into an altercation with a judge's son, who pulled a knife on her, these lessons proved valuable. The boy died in the fight, and Bass wasn't willing to leave his daughter's fate to the justice system, so they ran away from America to Malifaux. There, the guild called for Bass, and made him an offer that he couldn't refuse. Either he would be deputized and help them patrol the settlements outside of Malifaux City, or they would deport him and his daughter back to the United States, where justice was waiting for them. After being conscripted into the guild, Bass eventually went on a job and made contact with an Explorer Society agent, exactly according to Gretchen Janis's plan. I really enjoy the father-daughter duo that Bass has going on. They're really interesting characters in the lore, and I definitely recommend you check out their stories. Their whole crew really leans into the sort of Western and frontier theme that the game has a reputation for, probably more so than any other crew in the game. You got cowboys and trappers and frontiersmen and all sorts of cool stuff. Plus there's a giant sandworm, which is pretty awesome. It's one of the more interesting looking crews in my opinion that doesn't look entirely unrealistic, and I think they're a lot of fun to paint and model. But now let's go back to Sam, who's going to tell us a little bit more about how Bass and Frontier plays on the game.
Cornelius Bass and the Frontier keyword. Now, this is a keyword that's very much about terrain and markers, and specifically, it's about dust cloud markers. Dust cloud markers are a special kind of marker that Almost every model in this crew can kick up with the kick up dust action. They're 50mm markers that are concealing and severe. So they create concealment, and of course they're difficult to move through. But they're just little clouds of dust, so at the end of the turn they go away. Now, not every model can ignore these markers, and most models don't ignore concealment. So it's a very gun-heavy crew, but you have to be aware of the concealment you're creating. You don't want to penalize your own shooting by doing that. Bass himself, his original version, has some very interesting terrain synergies where he wants to be near terrain and he can attack enemies if they're near terrain. In keeping with his frontier aesthetic, the whole crew has this ability, Home on the Range, and that basically extends your deployment zone, but the key is it extends your deployment zone for everyone who has the ability more based on how many models have the ability. So if you only have 3 Home on the Range models, each of those models can deploy 3 inches past your crew's deployment zone. But if you have 7 or 8, each of those models can deploy 7 or 8 inches beyond your deployment zone, which means you can start pretty far up the board and control territory very quickly. And that really helps when you're using these little clockwork traps that Bass can hire and that his Pathfinders can make. Those are these little kind of weak traps that don't do much on their own, but you can summon them pretty easily and they can really pin your opponent in and make it hard for them to move around. Now, Bass's title version means that the dust cloud markers don't go away, and he also has an aura that lets his nearby models ignore concealment. So, you can use these markers much more aggressively to block lines of sight and to, defend your models with concealment because you can shoot through ignoring the concealment. He's also got a very interesting long-range gun that ignores hard to kill and a close-up attack that can inflict debilitating conditions. So this one's much more trying to get into your opponent's face and kind of lock them down with his melee attack and trap them with markers.
Lucas McCabe came from a wealthy and respected family in England, but he was not comfortable living under the thumb of the guild, so he decided to leave behind his life of luxury and strike out for some adventure. He started searching for treasure and found himself on the wrong side of the law, and also on the wrong side of some bad people. This led to an incident where his wife was tragically killed, and he was forced to flee to Malifaux before his past finally caught up with him. He made enemies of the Katanakas, the family that led the Ten Thunders crime syndicate, but they decided to spare him because he could be a useful asset. They sent him to infiltrate the guild, and he got a job traveling around Malifaux, searching for treasures and artifacts to bring back to the Governor General himself. For years he served the guild, but he was truly working for the Ten Thunders, often making fake copies of the artifacts he found and returning the real ones to his true masters. These fakes were instrumental in the Governor General's failure to ascend to tyranthood, which led to the formation of the Burning Man. Eventually the guild found out about his treachery, and they kicked him out, at which point McCabe realized he no longer served a purpose to the Ten Thunders. McCabe was later contacted by the Malifaux Explorer Society, who offered him a job, and McCabe accepted, both because he thought it might be a way that he could continue to be useful to the Thunders, and because it might serve his own ends. McCabe and the Wastrel crew are pretty cool. McCabe himself has a kind of Indiana Jones vibe going, and everybody else in his crew kind of has this spoiled rich kid turned adventurer vibe. And mostly by adventure, I mean crime. That kind of makes him fit in with the Explorer Society in an interesting way. And also, and most importantly, McCabe's also got Luna, his totem. She's fantastic, and she's a good enough reason to play this crew, if you don't like any of the other stuff. So with that, let's go over to Doug to talk a little bit about how McCabe plays in the game.
McCabe is generally characterized as highly mobile, very schemy, very non-combat oriented necessarily. He likes to run around the board, put scheme markers in places that are very frustrating for your opponent, and he likes scoring secondary points and being very quick and mobile. Now, one of the premier things he does do from an attack action standpoint is use the net gun, which can both slow and stagger big groups of models. So while he's running around the board, or while his crew is running around the board scoring points, he's trying to control the movement of his opponents by shooting them with his net gun effectively. He does have a bullwhip, which can be okay, but it's probably not the primary thing you want to be doing with this Napster. He also has trample, which means that he can move through severe terrain or other models very easily. And he also has the ability to give out different types of upgrades. Nowhere near as much as Jan Lo is doing, but it is still something that he does, and he gives them out, and they're different buffs. And it's going to be even more important when we go to talk to his second version. We'll put a quick cork in that and just finish off. Another thing to mention about Relic Hunter McCabe is that he has the dismount demise ability. So when you kill him, you just killed his horse. He actually gets off and fights on foot. At that point, he's probably a bit less effective. He's more kind of like a shadow of his former horse riding self, I would say. But now we can go and talk to McCabe 2. So McCabe 2, Tomb Delver, is a lot more of a super solo, is what I've heard people refer to him as. He also has Depths of Malifaux, so he's unaffected by both severe and hazardous terrain. He has extended reach, which means that attack actions generated by the charge action cannot hurt him. And he has a Bleeder Lash, which is a very good attack that he can stack with his reliquary upgrades to make him even scarier. So oftentimes you will see McCabe Tomb Delver gearing up with all these different upgrades and then throwing himself in the middle of some really hard to kill opponents and tearing them apart. Very different than how McCabe 1 plays, whereas McCabe 1, along with the rest of his crew, is very schemy and mobility oriented. He's going to be a lot more of just a straightforward push him up the map, throw a lightsaber on him, which is this blade upgrade that he can put on, and put on a bunch of other different upgrades and kill what you feel like killing. And so it gives you the dichotomy of whether or not you want to use the mounted version of McCabe to control your opponent's movement, or just try to go after isolating and killing models at a time with Tomb Delver.
Tiri was only a child when the tyrant Sharufe turned his wrath on his own people, the Awa. They were a species of the Fae, who were known for building machines and weapons, many of which were used to fight the tyrants. They were almost completely destroyed by Sharufe, who left their civilization in ruins. To make matters worse, he also put a curse on the Awa that would cause their skin to turn to ash when they weren't in the presence of heat. As her people have died off over the years, Tiri has risen to become their leader, and when the Burning Man returned to Earth, all the Awa sensed the presence of their old nemesis. Tiri then led them back to Malifaux City to try to find Sharufe and potentially put an end to the curse. She's led her people to recover some of their weapons and artifacts from ancient times, and upon returning to the city, she made contact with the Explorer Society, who was interested in finding out what the Awa had to offer. Tiri is the newest master for the Explorer Society, and she's very unusual. This is the first time we've really seen the Awa, and they're very alien-looking and have all kinds of strange technology that isn't like anything else we've seen in Malifaux. So suffice it to say, it's extremely cool. Now, because the Awa were known for their technology and their building of constructs, a lot of the things in her crew are mechanical or have some sort of strange and cool technology. And then you got Parson, who's got a relic hammer, and relic hammers are always cool. But with that, one more time, let's go back over to Sam, who's going to tell us a little bit more about how Tiri and the Bygone keyword operate in the game.
Tiri is very cool. She's the newest master from Madness of Malifaux. Tiri's got two abilities that are really key to her crew. The first is the Ideal. Now, that's an upgrade that is attached to you rather than one of your models, and it has two sides, tradition and technology. Every model in her keyword has some abilities that are tradition locked and some abilities that are technology locked. The models that have an ability that's locked to tradition, as long as the tradition side of your card is face up, you can use that ability. But the other abilities don't even exist. They're treated as though they're not even printed on your card. So sometimes that's front of card abilities, sometimes it's triggers, but they all tend to be very strong abilities. So you really have to plan which of them you're going to have access to. She's also got Scars of Cheruf, which is a keyword ability they share, which is that if they start their activation with the shielded condition, in any amount of shielded, they're treated as having a tome built in on all their duels for that activation. And they have some really strong tome triggers usually, so the ability to build in those triggers is great. So Tiri is really about buffing models. She has a pretty cool ranged attack that does consistent damage, although it's not that high. But she's very strong. She has good card draw. She can move models around, cycle cards in her hand out fast, hand out shielded, hand out focused. She's really about buffing your models and putting the right model in the right place. And she's got some pretty scary beaters like the Iron Matron, and even Parson has some substantial ability to deal damage if he's in tradition mode, because your opponent cannot cheat fate when they're targeted by his attacks, and he's got a 3/4/5 hammer that ignores shielded. Tiri the Architect is kind of the other half of this equation, and she's very interesting. She's not really as much of a buffer as the original Tiri, although she has some ability to buff. She has a strong attack that not only does some damage, but also turns off your opponent's healing for the whole turn, as long as you so much as hit them. And she also has these really cool lost technology markers, which are sort of things she can dredge up out of the sands once per turn. She can summon one of these markers, and it's a technology marker that your opponent can't remove using normal marker removal techniques. And it has abilities, like usually aura abilities that are buffs or debuffs, and what the marker does exactly varies depending on whether you're in tradition mode or technology mode. So some of the markers have effects like gravity well. There's one that lets your models, when they start a move, ignore models in terrain, kind of like they're flying. There's one that turns off your opponent's ability to spend focus, one that gives your models the equivalent of don't mind me. Lots of really cool buffs and debuffs. So a lot of playing Theory of the Architect is just figuring out what buffs you need and having the right marker in the right place.
So that's it for every master in the Explorer Society. Hopefully this video has given you a better sense of each one of the crews and helped you pick out which one you think is your favorite. So now that you've watched it, drop a comment below and let us know who your favorite is and if your opinion changed after watching this. I want to send another huge thank you to the Dead Aussie Gamer. There's going to be a link below where you can get access to all of his stuff, so make sure you go over there and show him some love. And of course, I want to thank the guys at the Danger Planet, especially Sam, for contributing to this video, as well as everyone who sent in a picture of their painted models. A bunch of their Instagrams are going to be linked down in the description, so make sure you go check all those guys out. And if you think you'd like to contribute some pictures to the next video, then send them on over to this email, and don't forget to let me know how to credit you. That's all I got for now, so I also want to send a huge shout out to the Extremely Cool Kids tier on Patreon, the Steam Powered Scoundrels, Dogmatize, and Devin. And thanks for watching.